They called it wrong. But how can something feel wrong when it finally makes you feel alive? I never thought I'd fall in love again. Not at my age. Not after everything. What began as the slow collapse of a marriage turned into something I never expected, something raw, forbidden, and painfully real. I didn't just lose my wife. I lost myself. Until he walked into my life and reminded me what it meant to feel alive. Love doesn't follow rules, and neither did he. This is a story of second chances, of hearts that heal in unexpected ways, and of a love that burns quietly until it can't be hidden anymore. I remember the silence most of all. The silence between two people who've shared a home for 20 years, but haven't shared a moment in 5. Ellen sat across the dinner table scrolling through her phone as if I didn't exist. The roast chicken between us was perfectly cooked, and perfectly cold by the time either of us lifted a fork. We used to talk. We used to fight. Somewhere along the way, silence became safer. I was 46, an architect, a husband, a father, and a ghost. That night, after another wordless dinner, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my office, staring at the model of a boutique hotel I was designing, wondering when my life had become so hollow. Then, like a spark in the dark, a message arrived. Subject: "Hey, can we talk?" It was from Adrian, a freelance designer I'd met years ago through work. We hadn't spoken in months, but his timing felt fated. The next day, I met him at a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a tailor's shop. Mismatched mugs, soft jazz, sunlight spilling across the tables, the kind of place that felt untouched by time. And there he was. Adrian had changed. Confident, grounded, his quiet energy still magnetic. "Hey," he said, his voice low but steady. "Hey," I echoed. We talked about work, life, and the strange ways people drift apart. Then his tone softened. "I'm leaving," he said. "Where to?" "Berlin. 2 weeks." I tried to smile, but something inside me twisted. Before I could speak, he looked straight at me. "I just needed to see you once more before I go," he admitted. "You were always the one who listened, the one who made me feel seen." Something in me cracked open. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Not with pity, but with understanding. For the first time in years, someone saw me. Not the tired husband or the quiet architect. Me. We walked for hours that afternoon, through quiet streets and falling light. Every word felt like oxygen, every silence like gravity, and when his hand brushed mine, neither of us pulled away. By dusk, we sat on the hood of my car, watching the sky fade from gold to violet. He turned to me and whispered, "If things were different, would you have chosen me?" I didn't answer right away. The truth was heavy, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. "I think maybe I already did," I said finally. That night, I drove home under the stars, my heart both breaking and reborn. Ellen was asleep on the couch, her phone glowing softly beside her. I looked at her and realized, sometimes love doesn't end. It just changes shape. And sometimes finding yourself means finally letting go. I moved through the house like a ghost, into our bedroom, into the shower, and let myself cry. The emotions I felt were real, but complicated. Longing, guilt, fear, and the ache of connection lost. Everything with Ellen felt hollow, lifeless, like we were two actors performing the memory of love. Over the next few days, I tried to pretend life was normal. I went to work, had coffee with colleagues, smiled when needed, and hid behind small talk. But late at night, when the world grew quiet, I checked my phone, waiting for a message from him. His name was Adrian. We'd met through a design project months earlier, and what started as polite collaboration had grown into something I couldn't name. He understood me. Not the version I showed the world, but the tired, aching man underneath. Then one evening, my phone lit up. "Can you come over?" he asked. "I just need someone to talk to." I should have said no, but I didn't. His apartment was small but alive, sketches taped to the walls, the scent of coffee and paint lingering in the air. Warm light, soft jazz, the kind of place that felt like an escape. When he opened the door, he smiled. Tired, gentle, honest. "I just needed you," he said quietly. "Not advice, not answers, just you." We talked for hours. About everything. Dreams, regrets, fears, the people who'd made us feel invisible. Somewhere between the laughter and the silence, I realized I hadn't felt this scene in years. By the time I left, there was a fragile peace between us. Connection without guilt, love without boundaries crossed. For the first time in forever, I remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere. But peace doesn't last. The next morning, Ellen confronted me. "I know where you were," she said coldly. "And I know who you were with." My stomach dropped. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I whispered. "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "You let it happen," and she was right. I had. But maybe for once I had chosen honesty over emptiness. That night, I stayed in a hotel. Rain traced lines across the window as the city blurred beneath it. My phone buzzed, a message from Adrian. "You okay?" "Not really," I replied. "But I'm facing it." "I'm proud of you," he wrote. I smiled quietly. "I'm scared," I typed, "but I care." That has to mean something. Days turned into weeks. Ellen's silence grew louder and rumors spread at work. But through it all, I kept seeing Adrian. Coffee in quiet cafes, long walks through the park, laughter over forgotten dinners. The world called it wrong. But to us, it just felt human. One Sunday, sunlight spilled through his studio windows as he painted. I watched him, the way his brow furrowed, the focus in his hands, and something inside me broke open. Not in passion, but in awe. I walked closer, helped him steady the canvas. He smiled softly, and for a moment everything made sense. It wasn't about escaping someone. It was about finally being found. That night we didn't sleep, just talked until dawn, words and silence weaving a fragile peace. Every look, every quiet confession carried more meaning than anything I'd said in years of marriage. But truth has consequences. Ellen filed for divorce. My employer suggested a break. Whispers followed me everywhere. And yet, I didn't stop seeing him. Because in the wreckage of my life, I'd found something worth keeping. Honesty, warmth, connection. Months passed. The world didn't explode. It simply shifted. The divorce went through quietly. I signed the papers, packed the boxes, and closed a 20-year chapter of my life. My new apartment was small. Bare walls, city lights, and space that finally felt like mine. When Adrian visited, he stood in the doorway, looked around, and smiled. "This feels right," he said. We built a quiet rhythm. Mornings with coffee, afternoons wandering art galleries, evenings watching old films. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me instead of the screen. "Why?" I'd ask. "Because you're real," he'd say simply. One afternoon we ran into former colleagues. They looked at us, curious, judging, silent. "Didn't know you were still around," one said. "I never left," I replied calmly. Outside, Adrian sighed. "They know." "I know," I said. "Do you regret being seen with me?" I turned to him. "Never," he smiled, eyes soft. "Then that's enough." That evening, as city lights flickered below, I realized something. Love doesn't always fix you. Sometimes it just reminds you that you're still alive. I opened the door and found Ellen standing there. She looked thinner, harder. Behind her stood a man in a suit, expressionless like a lawyer or private investigator. "I just want to talk," she said. Then Adrian stepped into view. Her eyes narrowed. I said talk, not play house with him. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "Ellen, he's not a child," I said calmly. She snapped back, "Maybe not, but you were supposed to be his mentor, not this." Her voice trembled, half anger, half heartbreak. "You're not stable," she whispered. "You're not safe." I'm filing to have you removed from his life completely. My throat tightened. You've already lost me, Ellen, I said quietly. Don't try to take him too. He's not yours anymore, she said coldly. Whatever he is now, you made him that. Then she turned and walked away. That night, I told Adrian everything. He didn't rage. He didn't cry. He just stood very still. She's right, he said softly. This could ruin you. It already has, I whispered. But not you. Never you. He looked down, voice barely audible. I don't want to be the reason you fall apart. You're not, I said. You're the reason I'm becoming something real. He took my hand. If I have to choose between safety and truth, he said, I'll choose truth every time. That night we held each other. There was no crossing of lines and no explicitness, just a quiet closeness that pulsed under every breath. His fingers brushed the back of my neck. My lips rested against his temple, and in that silence I whispered, You matter to me. A week later, Adrian brought a huge canvas, covered in deep red strokes layered with gray and gold. What is it? I asked. Us, he said simply. Messy, honest, beautiful. I stared at it for a long time, then kissed his forehead. Not out of desire, but out of love. But love doesn't live untouched. The whispers grew louder, gossip online, cruel posts, judgment everywhere. I can't let this destroy you, Adrian said one night after deleting another message from my phone. It already did, I said. But maybe destruction is how we start again. He looked at me for a long time, eyes steady. Then let's burn the rest of it down. The world didn't welcome us. It turned cold, sharp, and unforgiving, but we didn't run. We didn't lie. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving. We didn't apologize for feeling something that didn't fit the mold. We just lived. I wasn't trying to fit into someone else's life anymore. I was building a new one, with him. At night, we'd paint together in silence. Sometimes he'd play soft music, Mazzy Star, quiet indie tracks full of aching lyrics that wrapped around us like a second skin. Between canvases and candlelight, we created something that no one could name, trust. Understanding, connection. One evening, I found him on the rooftop, the city lights glowing below us. He sat cross-legged on a blanket, a thermos of tea beside him. You okay? I asked, settling beside him. He looked out at the skyline. I've been thinking. Dangerous? I teased. He smiled faintly, then turned to face me. What if we stopped waiting for the world to give us permission? I blinked. What do you mean? I mean, what if we just told the truth? Stopped hiding, stopped apologizing? I reached for his hand. I don't want to hurt you, I said quietly. You won't, he replied. The lies hurt more. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. On the screen was a draft post, just a few words. I didn't follow the rules the world gave me. I found someone who truly sees me, and I won't pretend it's not real. I looked at him. Are you sure? His eyes were steady. If we keep hiding, they win. I nodded and pressed post. The reaction was immediate. Some were cruel. Some laughed. But then, messages started coming in, people saying, I thought I was alone. Your courage gave me permission to feel. I don't understand your story, but I respect it. Love saved me. Maybe it's saving you, too. A month later, his art show opened. Not in a grand gallery, but a cozy converted warehouse. Raw wood, soft jazz, and walls full of emotion. And it was packed. Every painting told our story. Not about scandal, not about defiance, but about love that dared to exist anyway. And for the first time, under the glow of those warm lights, I realized we hadn't burned everything down. We'd simply lit the way forward. Friends, artists, and quiet onlookers who had followed Adrian's story online. filled the room, to each one drawn to the raw honesty of his work and the truth of the bond that had helped him rediscover himself. The centerpiece of the show was a towering canvas titled Inheritance. It depicted two men, one older, one younger, surrounded by swirling layers of charcoal and deep red, with golden light tracing their outlines. Not father and son, not lovers, just two souls reaching toward each other across a lifetime of searching, longing and understanding. At the bottom, written in Adrian's delicate script, were the words, "I found connection in the place I least expected, inside the heart of someone who helped me see the life I never knew I needed." I stood there, unable to look away. Then I turned to him, and he wasn't watching the crowd. He was watching me. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. He smiled softly. "I'm proud of us." That night, we celebrated quietly on the rooftop. No crowd, no noise, just the city breathing below us. He rested against my shoulder, and the moonlight washed over us like a blessing. "I used to think I was broken," he murmured. "You're not broken," I said gently. "You're rare, unapologetic, alive." He smiled and touched my chest over my heart. "And you?" he asked. I sighed, thinking of all the years I'd lived by someone else's rules. I spent most of my life trying to fit into boxes, husband, professional, friend, and somewhere along the way I forgot who I was. But now, I smiled, I finally feel like myself. That night, under the stars, it wasn't about labels or expectations or even the world's judgment. It was about truth, presence, and connection, the kind that doesn't need permission to exist. Life moved forward. I started writing again, essays about honesty, art, and the beauty of finding connection where you least expect it. One piece went viral, reaching people who were searching for something real. Adrian kept painting, and soon his work began appearing in galleries from Los Angeles to Berlin. We traveled, laughed, and built a quiet, ordinary, beautiful life, one day at a time. Some people never understood us, but we didn't need them to. Every morning I woke beside him, his hair tousled, his skin warm against mine, his presence steady and real. And I realized then why I had walked away from the life I once had. Not to escape, but to finally arrive. Connection, love, authenticity. They don't always appear where the world expects them to. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're complicated. But when they're real, you don't run from them. You step into them. Even when it defies expectation. Because in the end, truth and love are the only things worth choosing. Whiskers content and purring in the sun.